We learn a lot of lessons growing up. Our parents teach us how to ride a bike, they teach us how to do our homework, and in some cases, they teach us how to get a job and apply to a good college. Parents are amazing. They're the reason why we're on this earth in the first place, and they're the reason why we haven't starved to death up to this point. But in all of the lessons that we're taught from childhood up to being a young adult, there tends to be one specific topic that is left out in most households, and that topic is money. Now, most households tend to have somewhat of a taboo atmosphere around talking about money. You don't talk about how much you make, and you don't talk about how much others make. It is kind of like your private parts. You keep it to yourself and you don't let anyone touch it. However, in my opinion, that is not the right formula to set up young adults for success in the real world. Because when you have a household that never talks about money, never discusses how to use it efficiently and how to use different things like credit cards and loans effectively, you are leaving a generation of young adults to fend for themselves and make mistakes and have to learn from them. And I can honestly say that I was in this exact same position when I was going off to college. I have absolutely amazing parents. They gave me everything I needed growing up, but we just didn't talk about money. And as I'm now 22 years old, have graduated from college and made a bunch of mistakes in the last 4 years, in this video I want to talk about the top 3 things I wish my parents would have taught me about money. So going right into the first lesson I wish my parents would have taught me about money, and that is no one, and I mean absolutely no one, cares about how much whatever you have. They don't care about how much money you have, they don't care about how many cars you have, and they don't care what kind of house you live in. No one cares. And especially as a young adult, when you're already not expected to have much anyway, if you do have a lot of money or a nice house or something like that, we're not just going to automatically assume that you're successful because you have these nice things. We're going to assume that mommy and daddy pay for it until we get to know you a little bit better, and then we learn that you may have bought it from your business or other things. But the point is that no one thinks twice about the things that you have. I think as a generation, or maybe even the human race in total, we put too much emphasis on what other people think of us. We put too much emphasis on how other people perceive us. We think that if we drive the nicer car or if we get the nicer house, that people will think that we're more successful than we may actually be. And half the time when we see people with these luxurious things, we don't even think twice about it. Take me for example. If I'm driving down the highway and I see a really nice car that I think is pretty cool, I'll look over at that car and say, oh, that's a really nice car, and then I'll turn my head back to the road and continue driving and not even think twice about it. When I look at that car, I don't examine the person driving it. I don't roll my window down and take pictures of that person. I look at the car and I say that's a nice car, and then I mind my business. And if I had to guess, I would say this is how about 95% of people react when they see people with nice things. They look at it, they think it's nice, and then they mind their own business. However, I believe that it is way too easy to get caught in the mindset that people actually do care about what you have, and that'll cause you to make impulse purchases or overall bad financial decisions because you care way too much about what people think. When I was a sophomore in college, there came a point where I needed a new car. I could no longer use the car that I was driving at the moment, and I was in the process of shopping for a new car. So I went on all of the car shopping websites. I went on CarMax, I went on True Trader or whatever it's called, and I started trying to find a good car for me. But as I was shopping for cars within my price range of around $3,000, at the time I didn't see anything that I would be proud of driving because I didn't want to drive a old dune buggy. So I then bumped my price range from $3,000 up to $12,000, and I bought a 2015 Jeep Cherokee for $13,100, financed at a 15% interest rate. Now there are a ton of red flags in there already. For one, I bumped my price range up to $12,000, and the reason why I did that was because I had a pre-approval letter for $12,000 for a new car. And the second thing was I actually bought the car for $13,100, which was $1,100 over my pre-approval letter, which means I had to use my credit card in order to pay for the overage amount on that car. And the third red flag is that I had a 15% interest rate. Now this was my first time getting a loan, so I thought a 15% interest rate was average, but as an adult in life, when I learned that a 3 to 4 interest rate was average, I was absolutely shocked that I ever agreed to a 15% interest rate. That is absolutely insane for a car note. And all of this is the result of me thinking that people would care about what I'm driving, especially since I was only a sophomore in college. Why would I have any assumptions that people would expect me to make a lot of money? Most of us were all broke college students, so I should have just went with the $3,000 car instead of trying to get one of the fanciest ones on the lot. So this definitely taught me a big lesson, and I still have that car in the driveway now, and I think I'm going to always keep it just to remind me to teach my future children that keeping up with the Joneses is not really a good idea. But speaking of using that credit card to pay for the overage amount on that car, that leads me right into my second point. And the second lesson I wish my parents would have taught me about money is that credit cards are not an emergency fund. Now I know this may sound like common sense when I say it, but I'm sure you've been caught in a few transactions when you couldn't quite afford what you were buying, and you thought, well, I don't have the cash to purchase this fully, so I'll just charge it to my credit card and pay off the rest of the balance whenever I get paid. Well, if you do think like that, I can assure you that you are not alone by any means. I thought like this for years on an income of only $900 a month. So whenever I wanted something that I couldn't quite afford, I would just charge it to my credit card, which had about a $7,500 credit limit, and then I would just worry about paying it off when I get paid. But what would happen when I get paid? Well, I'll tell you what happened. Whenever I got paid again, I would see something else that I liked, and I would say, well, I still have a lot of my credit credit limit left over. Let me just charge this as my credit card and I'll pay it off once I get a little bit more money. And this is a quick and devastating downward spiral to be in. It came to the point where I had over $6,000 worth of credit charges with a monthly income of only $900 a month. And it came to the point where I didn't like checking my credit cards because it was depressing seeing how much money I actually owed. And by not checking it and only paying the minimum balance, I was being eaten alive in interest payments. Needless to say, that took a lot of money, a lot of discipline, and a lot of time to get out of that debt. And it was also an extremely humbling learning experience because I now knew that mindset regarding credit cards wouldn't be feasible at all going forward into the future. So if I can go back time in a sense and have a conversation with my younger self, I would tell myself that yes, you can get a credit card. Yes, you need a credit card in order to start building credit history, but treat your credit card like a debit card. Don't buy anything on your credit card that you wouldn't be able to afford in cash. And if you are worried about emergencies, start saving up an emergency fund in cash so you don't have to rely on your credit cards, which is subject to interest rates, in order to make those emergency payments. Even though I was always someone who knew that you should have savings, I was never someone who knew what to save for. I just thought of an arbitrary number of $1,000 in the savings account was a pretty good amount. But if you don't have a plan or a reason for why you're having that money in savings, then it is way too easy to take that money out of savings to make an impulse purchase. So as I got older and started to have a little bit more structure around my finances, I told myself that my emergency fund should be 3 to 6 months worth of my expenses. And I also told myself that I needed a miscellaneous emergency fund just in case a car battery or a car tire goes out of about $1,000. This way I wasn't just saving money just to save money. I actually had a purpose and a goal for this money and a use for it in case a situation did occur. Having this simple change in the way I thought about the structure of my finances allowed me to save money more successfully because I had a purpose. And I believe that with anything in life, having a purpose allows you to be a lot more successful than if you didn't have a purpose and you're just wandering around aimlessly. If you're trying to start a small business, having a purpose behind that small business allows you to have the chance to be much more successful than if you just wanted to make money. If you're starting a YouTube channel, having a purpose behind the content that you're willing to create allows you to be a lot more successful than just starting a channel to make money. So what I'm trying to say is that put a purpose behind your money. Teach your kids to put a purpose behind their money so they don't have to rely on credit cards or they don't make impulse purchases once they have too much money on hand. And the last big thing I wish my parents would have taught me about money is a quote that I heard from Jay-Z a few years back. And what he said was, if you can't afford to buy it twice, then you can't afford it. Now this is a concept that would have definitely helped me out a ton in my college years. Like I said, I wasn't always the most financially flashy person. I didn't care if I had the nicest car on my basketball team. I didn't care if I had the nicest clothes. I just didn't want the ugliest car. But I did care about making a few miscellaneous purchases that I just could not afford. And probably the worst purchase I had in college, other than the purchase of my Jeep, was the purchase of this camera right here. Now I have had an entrepreneur mindset for a long time now. I've always knew that I wanted to start my own business someday, but I just had no idea of what that business would be. So in college, one of my teammates was actually doing photography for people on campus, and he was charging about $100 to $200 per session on that. And I thought that was a really cool business model because he was able to fit his schedule around our basketball schedule, and he was also able to make almost double what we were making from our college stipend just from taking photos. And since I was wanting to expand my skills in any way, I decided to try to tag along with him. And one of his recommendations was if I was really going to get serious about doing photography, which I didn't know exactly if I wanted to be, that I needed my own camera. So I went on Amazon and bought one of the cheapest but nicest cameras that I could find, and that was this Canon Rebel T5 camera. Now I believe that at the time this camera set me back about $300, and I was only making $900 a month, so this was 1/3 of my monthly income. And keep in mind, I was also paying my own car note at this time and my own insurance, so I didn't have much room for error if I wanted to eat every single day. But in the end, this camera turned out to be a really good purchase because this is what I used to start my YouTube channel, and my YouTube channel has since started earning revenue, which will pay for the camera in due time. But if I could go back in time, I would absolutely delay this purchase because I could barely afford to buy this camera once, let alone twice. And if I took Jay-Z's advice, I would leave it alone entirely until I had enough money to afford it completely. And there are also a few other examples of this, like if I go back to my Jeep, I definitely couldn't afford to pay that car note twice, so I probably should have thought about getting a cheaper car that I could afford more comfortably. But thankfully in the end it all worked out and I didn't go broke most months, and I was still able to get my senses together to come out of college with a sizable investment account. But with all that being said, those are the 3 biggest lessons that I wish my parents would have taught me about money, and I'm pretty curious of any lessons that I may have left out, any lessons that you were taught from making mistakes in your early adulthood period. So if you have any comments about that, leave them down in the comment section below, as I like to read and respond to every single one of them. Also, if you like this video, do your boy a favor and smash the like button, as it really does help my channel out and also allows me to reach a larger audience. But with all that being said, I really hope that you did find value in this video, and I'll see you in the next one, guys.